pay back the money. The bank clerk gives the borrower a check for $100,000 or a deposit slip crediting the borrower's account with the money. The borrower then writes checks to the builders, the workers, the escrow company, which then writes checks to pay company bills. So $100,000 of new checkbook money is added to the money in circulation. However, the flaw now shows up. The money to pay back the loan is not created. And so the borrower has to take out of circulation $270,456 or $170,456 more than what he borrowed. Every new loan puts the same process in operation. Each borrower adds a small sum to the total money supply when he borrows. But the payment on the loan then deducts a much larger sum from the total money supply. And since this has happened millions of times during the past few years, you can see why the United States has gone from a very prosperous nation to a very debt-ridden nation, where practically every home, every farm, every industry is paying interest to the bankers. There's therefore no way that all debtors can pay off the lenders. I'd like to read to you a passage from Proverbs chapter 1, beginning with verse 10 through verse 19. This talks about communism, which is the title we give what I talked about, the redistribution of wealth. It says here, "My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. If they say, Come with us, let us lay wait for blood. Let us lurk privily for the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them up alive as the grave, and whole as those that go down into the pit. We shall find all precious substance. We shall fill our houses with spoil. Cast in thy lot among us. Let us all have one purse. My son, walk not thou in the way with them. Refrain thy foot from their path. For their feet run to evil, and make haste to shed blood. Surely in vain the net is spread in the sight of any bird, and they lay in wait for their own blood. They lurk privily for their own lives. So are the ways of everyone that is greedy of gain, which taketh away the life of the owners thereof." My friends, this is communism, and the Bible refutes it. That means it's been around for thousands of years. So what we have here with the Federal Reserve Corporation is nothing new. Redistribution of wealth, one purse, while people are losing their own blood for the greedy gain of the communists who so infiltrate our economic system, our banking and our monetary system. In the millions of transactions made each year, just like what I've discussed with the borrowing, the usury, the communism, very little actual currency will change hands. About 95% of all cash transactions are done in the form of check. Realize that banks must hold on site in cash only 10% of all their deposits at any given time. And that means 90% of all deposits, though they actually are held by the bank, are not present in the form of actual currency. Consequently, the banker is relatively safe to create that so-called loan by writing the check or deposit slip, not against actual money, but against your promise to pay it back. The cost to the banker is paper and ink and a few dollars of overhead for each transaction made. Let's talk about national economics. The same principles apply to national economies as well as to individual economies. For example, when a nation gets into trouble, along comes the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank to loan more money so that the nation in question can make the repayments, the interest on the repayments. The different national economies are like the ships in the sea. They're all sinking. But some ships are kinder than others, and they try to help out some of the other ships bail out their water as they run into icebergs and face tidal waves that the national bankers, the world bankers, send their ways, but they're all sinking. And this prolongs the inevitable while one tries to help the other. We have to get out from under the world bankers' control. Let's talk about truth and correction. You see, there is a correct method for providing currency for each citizen. No private banks would exist to rob the people if we followed the original constitutional system. Government banks, under the control of the people's representatives, not Satan's representatives, but the people's representatives, would issue and control all money and credit. They would issue actual currency as well as limited credit at no interest for the purchase of capital goods such as homes. This means that a $100,000 home or loan for a home would only require a $100,000 repayment. All workers on the home would get paid just as they do now. But the greedy, communistic world bankers in the Federal Reserve Corporation would not take in a mere extra $170,456. Under the present system, the extra burden of interest forces workers and businesses to demand more money for all the work and goods to pay their own ever-increasing debts and taxes. This increase in prices and wages is inflation. Bankers, politicians, and economists blame it on everything except for the real cause, the interest levied on money and debt by bankers. Emory, page 8. Inflation benefits the moneylenders since it wipes out the savings of one generation who would like to finance their next generation. But the next generation has to borrow all over again now from the greedy world bankers, the Federal Reserve banks. And it's systematically designed to do this, to break the American middle class. I mentioned before about Mexico's history. I shared with you how in the early 1900s, Mexico was the wealthiest nation on the planet. But these same greedy communistic world bankers busted Mexico's wonderful middle class. They had a thriving, beautiful middle class. But look at Mexico now. When you think of Mexico, you think of dirt, the poverty, the joblessness, the crime, all the diseases and sicknesses they have, and they don't have the money they need for medical attention. And you find a tremendous persecution on the born-again Christians, even by people who call themselves religious. But it's a worldly religion that pervades Mexico. It's called humanism. And some American politicians even wrote the Humanistic Manifesto. If you want to see the future of America, look at Mexico. And yet they're trying to import that poverty to us over here. I served with the Minutemen Project in April. I was down there. I was en route from Texas, where I was on television being interviewed, and on the way back to San Diego, I went down there, and I offered a field worship service. I kept patrol from 10 p.m. to 6 in the morning. And what the Minutemen Project did, what we did was to report the illegal immigrants as they came over. And to show you the kind spirit that America has, Christian America, we even offered to feed the aliens that we caught. Well, we didn't really catch them.